First and foremost, I want to thank some of the people that have helped us make this go so far. Uh, Raising Cane Productions, Aaron Kane. If you want to know more about how to do this, contact Aaron Kane, and you can contact him through the Cage Rage Podcast. Find us at thecageragepodcast.com, Cage Rage Podcast on Facebook, the Cage Rage Podcast on YouTube. And we're trying to work that out right now. I know some people have had a little bit of trouble finding out which one is which one when you go through and you use the search engine. So we're trying to work that out right now so that works for you. We apologize for the inconvenience. Hopefully we'll have that taken care of by midweek for you. But this podcast will be up tonight so that you can view it before the fight happens tomorrow night. So, Miguel, take us through what's going on with Khabib and Conor. What's led up to the fight so far? What's happened since last week we talked?
Well, let's talk about what you were looking at, which was, the business side of things here. What's this thing going to do on pay-per-view? And I think that's an interesting question. I think, there's a lot of speculation. I think that I'm going to take a cautious approach. I'm going to wait and see. I want to see because you hinted at the UFC in the last podcast. We talked about how the UFC avoided the big media tour, the worldwide, cities, stopping in cities and putting people on a podium and let McGregor do his thing.
Yeah.
They avoided all that. They got some of that this week, and they had a press conference in late September. But they've avoided a lot of that stuff. Does that equate to less pay-per-view dollars? A lot of people in the normal formula that normally does, right? That's how these things are done. So in this situation, I think it becomes an interesting pay-per-view to watch from a historical perspective because the UFC is firmly riding McGregor's coattails on this one. It really is all the McGregor show. They're not coming back with a lot. That's not a disrespect to Nurmagomedov, but Nurmagomedov is a UFC athlete. That's what he is. He's a very good one, maybe a historic one, but he's not a crossover star, whiskey touting, custom suit wearing. It sounds like Ric Flair.
Yeah. So the thing with Khabib is this. He speaks English, but he doesn't speak. It's not his first language, and he doesn't speak it that well. I got to kind of wonder. He's not a man of a lot of words either way. I suspect if Conor could speak Chechenian or Russian, if he would go in and be able to do the same thing, I think he would still hand him his lunch. And so maybe the idea is that, look, Khabib can't possibly hang with him in any way. It's going to diminish the fight in so many ways that it's going to make him look bad. And if we just shut up and let him fight and we let the fight talk, do you think maybe that's the idea? Let the fight sell the fight this time. We've done that enough, and let's do something else and save that for the upcoming, which I believe is going to be a Diaz fight. We'll see, obviously, but do you think that might be what's going on there?
I think that I said it at the start that Khabib is a UFC athlete, and he's a very good one, but you get a limited package there in terms of what I think you're looking for. And I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing, but I'm saying that's what Khabib is. So here it goes. Khabib, you've been talking about it for years, just like everybody else is calling out McGregor. The reason you're doing it is because it's the biggest payday out there, but you're also obviously not afraid of him and stuff like that. Guess what? We're actually going to do the fight. Holy Toledo, fantastic. Let me see the contract. The contract, extra zeros, I'm in. And you got Khabib. Khabib will do whatever you want. He'll dance. He'll, if you want to script it for him, but you'd have to really script it for him. You'd have to really, because it's not going to come naturally from him. He's not coming out. The kilt is Scottish, right? But let's say you took something Irish, like the Irish flag, and burnt it or something,
Yeah.
But that's not Khabib. Khabib isn't going to do that type of disrespectful stuff, not off the bat, not unless you do it to him first, right? So McGregor's going to do it, and he's already kind of put up his wall and said, I'm immune to that shit. So now you got some limited trash talking. That's what you get. That's what you get with Khabib. There's no way around it. You can't have that big confrontation and big build-up because of those limitations. You know what I mean? And again, I don't think that's bad. I think Khabib has played it very well. He's played the only way he can play it, and that is no matter what hits him, he's confident, and that makes him scary.
Yeah, we saw something really different in Connor this week too with the last press conference they had, where he seemed like a really different person than I saw a lot of talk about body posture, and there were a lot of people that were insinuating that McGregor looked scared, that he showed there was a chink in his armor, so to speak, that there was some insecurity that they read in it. I didn't see it that way at all. I saw him as just kind of being like, look, we're going to fight, and I know you're a guy that I'm going to have to fight, and you might kill me, and I might kill you, and I respect you for that. And I think if there's anything that might be different in this one, it's that sort of like the Diaz fight, Conor truly respects him for what he can do to him physically if the fight goes the wrong way, and for Conor, that is. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think at the back of McGregor's head, McGregor knows it's better for him if he dictates and if the fight goes his way, because if it doesn't and Nurmagomedov gets his way, and imposes his will, he's going to get hurt. Just the idea. Even you were talking earlier about avoiding a takedown and things like that. I don't even know if Nurmagomedov has to take him down, and so much as even just get chest to chest, hold him chest to chest, and do damage there, even if it's up against the fence or in the clinches or whatever. Can you get to the plum? Can you do stuff like that? He's going to be better inside than McGregor. I think McGregor needs the distance and the precision to operate. So I don't even know if it's a takedown game at the very beginning, more of a grind that he would need to impose. But I think he's going to have his game plan. What makes McGregor interesting to me is what you alluded to is in the Diaz situation. Okay, here you took a guy and put him in against Diaz. Now, by all the fact is I know Diaz is an icon and people love him and stuff. I know him from being in the business. I don't know him personally, but I know him from being in the business. And I know that you're talking about facts. You're talking about a 15-year-old kid that used to do dojo fights. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He is a lifer at fighting, and there's no doubt about it. So what McGregor did in fighting him at a big weight class and then taking a loss and then coming back and fighting a guy that professional again and beating him, that's an amazing thing. And I don't know if he's got a lot of credit for that. And you manipulate the judges and you play the game and the whole thing. But he got it. He got that whole game. He came back and won the second fight. Now there's talk maybe of a trilogy. They'll make another bundle of money. McGregor orchestrated that first and foremost by upping his game to fight Diaz the second time. So he has that in the back of his pocket against Nurmagomedov. Nurmagomedov is going to come at his best this time. The next time, if he beats him in the fourth round and it was a little bit tough and he got hit once and got rocked and there's enough talk to do it again. If he beats him and McGregor gets a chance at him again after feeling him, after doing this, Nurmagomedov, how does he improve? Because McGregor's shown he can do that. So that's one of the things that makes this fight, from a money perspective, interesting, is if there's drama at the end of it, McGregor almost doesn't even have to win to come out the winner.
Yeah. The thing is with McGregor, you only get one chance to beat McGregor. McGregor can have as many chances as he wants to beat you because everybody wants to fight him as many times as they can because they want as many paydays as they can get with him. Because, Diaz is never going to get that payday again unless he fights McGregor again. No matter who he fights, it's never going to be that payday again unless it's McGregor. And so he's begging for that fight. And he's kind of holding out for that fight, let's face it. I've heard word that he's going to fight again, and I don't know. That seems pretty lofty to me, and it seems kind of up in the air. We'll see what happens with that.
Well, he signed to fight Dustin Poirier. He signed to fight Dustin Poirier. So
but let's see if it happens, right?
I think it'll happen, but I totally understand what you're saying. So yeah. I do understand what you're saying.
Okay, but so on that
back out there.
Okay, so on that same track, the other thing we know about big fights like this, especially a fight that hasn't been blown up enough, we know this. We know that when a fight comes down to it, if the pay-per-view package isn't what it looks like it's supposed to be, say a day before, even a few hours before, injuries happen in locker rooms. USADA comes in this case. Commissions come in. Overnight flu bugs happen. There's all kinds of things that happen to make these fights suddenly not happen. The UFC still gets a pay-per-view because and they'll have to refund some amount of them, but they're gonna have a fill-in to make sure that they've got some great fights on the line either way. What do you think the possibility is that they cancel the fight last minute and that they fill it in with other great fights because they've got some good fights on the card, no doubt. The Ferguson fight looks fantastic. What happens if one or the other or both decide they're not going to fight for whatever reason? And the real reason would probably be that they're not fighting because they want to stall it so that they can build it up and make it bigger. Which, as a promoter, I would understand that. I would have done that.
No, first of all, this fight's gonna happen. I mean, stop the worrying and things like that. I think the UFC is gonna have Vegas on lock, and if they're worried, if there's a shred of worry about babysitting and things like that, everybody's going to be talked to and on their best behavior. McGregor is not stupid. You're not going to get another bus incident out of him. And then I remind you about the bus incident because as a promoter, I think the optimal thing is a promoter, unless you're going to do a Pacquiao-Mayweather thing where they actually overweighted and you're going to wait years and years, as a promoter, you want 6 months for this fucker. You know what I mean? To promote this right. And they've had that with the bus incident. That's the 6 month period, right?
I agree.
So my feeling here is again, the UFC they've got McGregor, they've seen McGregor do, they got to be McGregor's the first guy they're scared might be bigger than them. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that's exactly the right way to put it, but he's the first guy they really haven't just crushed and said, no, you're our dog. You know what I mean? Yeah. Everybody else was wanting to do other fights or, hey, let me go fight for Bellator or whatever. Everybody else they piss on and say, you can't do that. We own you, boy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just the fact that they allowed that stuff, he's on a different level. And now they're riding his coattails. We saw they didn't do the tour and things like that. They signed him to an 8-fight deal. What they want is they want to see what they got. Let's see what we got. McGregor shows up professional as hell, looking to make another $100 million, not complacent as far as the show. Can he prove that in the ring? If he does, their 8-fight deal, they'll make their money back. There's no problem. Yeah. There's the rumor that White said there's $100 million that McGregor could go home with for this fight. So
for this fight.
Yeah. So we'll see what they're doing. Maybe Reebok, if Reebok is ponying up with a lifetime deal after this fight, if McGregor wins, then who knows how that goes,
real quickly, in a fundamental way, bounce the numbers off the audience so they understand how that works. Bounce the numbers off of our viewers so they understand how McGregor walks away with $100 million off of this pay-per-view.
I don't know exactly for sure.
Just an idea.
It's got to be a complicated contract. But let me give you some ideas and some things that we do know. Take the NBA and their contracts with sneaker companies.
Right.
And their ability to grab individuals and stuff. So now what happens is the NBA has a deal where they have a deal with Nike or whoever it is where most guys have to wear that sneaker. And then there's guys with individual deals and things like that, many of them with the same company, but some with some competitors. But they may not even be able to wear those competitors while they're playing the game because the NBA owns all that. So in this case, you've got the UFC in the place of the NBA, but in the NBA, the money being tossed around for incoming guys is still millions of dollars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're looking at $100 million deals for guys like, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, and more money like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the money from the sneaker companies is huge. So what you look at is the UFC's much maligned deal with Reebok. Now, I look at it as that was a chip for the future. Because what happens is the Reebok deal worked out where the most decorated UFC guy gets about $40K from Reebok for his fight. Right? And that means you got to have 20 UFC fights and whatever the deal is. Entry-level guys get $2K or $5K or something along those lines. And everybody said, well, I used to make more money off my other sponsors. You know what I mean? So, but that whole controversy, but this is the deal. This is the part that I don't know if everybody else has mentioned. Say after the 6 years, Reebok has done okay because you walk on the streets and you see people with shirts and stuff like that. And Reebok has done okay. Now they come back with 10 times the money for that contract. And now instead of $40,000, they're making $400,000 from a Reebok sponsorship. But now on top of it, what comes with that is something like a McGregor, who they could say, we want an individual deal with him, like Nike did with Colin Kaepernick, for example.
Right.
You know? So does McGregor own his rights to sign a deal like that? I think the UFC has to be involved in that deal because of earlier contracts where he signed away ancillary rights and stuff like that. So they're all going to grab a piece of that. But someone like a Reebok could be saying to McGregor, you come back, you win, or you come back and we reached it. Here's $15 million a year for the next 5 years, and now you've added $75 million.
You know, let's give McGregor a little bit of props where they're due. Here's a guy who, you know, we've said in the past, you know, he's from the streets of Ireland. You know, it's no secret that he's kind of from the slums, or I don't know if you call that the ghettos in Ireland or not, but you know, he's rough. He's a roughneck. You know, he comes from the rough side of town, the wrong side of the tracks or whatever, and he's street smart. And here's a guy who came in to most certainly, as far as combat sports are concerned, the greatest league in sports history, as far as MMA is concerned, and he fed them their lunch. He came in and he said, I didn't come to take part, I came to take over, and he did. I mean, he absolutely did every single thing he said he was going to do. And it's been very impressive. And in so doing, he made it so that every step of the way, he's been able to do things that he said he was going to do. That when the Mayweather fight started, the rumors were out. Everybody's like, that's never, ever going to happen. And nothing better could have happened for him than for people to say that's never going to happen. Because that was the buildup he really needed, was that's never going to happen, which made it happen. And the UFC, you know, we're never even going to talk about that. And McGregor was able to go to them and say, look, I can make a lot of money for all of us if you let me do this. And in so doing, that released his chain from the UFC. Because once he made $100 million, he said, you know what? I'll quit. I'll have injuries the rest of my life, and I'll just never fight again. I won't fulfill my contract. Big deal. We can spend the rest of our lives in court, and you'll never get me again, and that'll be the end of it, and I'll retire this way. But he didn't want to do that, obviously. So I think that's a good thing. I'm glad that he did it, and I hope that other fighters are learning from him. It seems like they are. It seems like other fighters are starting to look towards him as a way of, I want to be like Conor kind of thing, you know, and I hope he is the guy that leads MMA into the next generation of what it's going to be. It sure looks that way. So having said that, the next generation of MMA, to me, looks like something really different. And we talked about Bellator earlier, and here's the thing with Bellator that struck me as really different. Okay, we have the throwback era of Bellator because they're trying to make sure they get an old fogey like me to go in there and go, well, hell yes, I want to see. I'm going to watch Rampage just because it's Rampage. And I'm going to watch Wandy just because it's Vanderlei. No matter what, I'm going to watch it. I don't care. I love them. You know, I remember when we did the ADCC and what was it, Huntington Beach in 03 maybe? 05? I don't remember. But Rampage showed up and I helped him carry T-shirt boxes out of his car, out of his blue Ford Taurus. You know, and he's just a great guy. And, you know, he didn't make any money and he didn't have any money. And he was trying to make it any way he could. So he was peddling T-shirts to make it. And he sold me a T-shirt after I carried him in. He said, I'll make you a deal on my T-shirts. And I said, okay, I'll help you carry him. I I'd have carried every box in for him just because I was a fan, you know. And he sold me a deal for $20. The T-shirts were $20, and that was the deal he made me. Anyways, the point is that there are some of us that would watch Legends because we love the legends, and Bellator knows that. So they bring old farts like us in to watch that, and that's great. And I'm glad they did it. Enough's enough, and I don't want to see those guys fight anymore. You know, we saw what we needed to see, and it's done. But here's the other thing they did. They took a big leap forward in some of the other things that they were doing. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not saying that it's the be-all, end-all. But they're certainly making steps in the right direction to catch a younger audience that's more tech-savvy, that does everything right here. Oops, that does everything right here. Everything is on their phone. Everything is on an iPad or is on some type of portable device, and you know that's where it's at. Everything is in apps and everything is in content. So where is the UFC missing specifically with the McGregor fight that Bellator hit the other night? Because their numbers, I haven't seen the full numbers yet, but it's reported that they by far did the biggest numbers they've ever done. And they did some new technology they've never done before. And I don't know what all of that even is because I'm not even that technology savvy enough to talk about that. But you sort of are. So fill me in. Where's the UFC missing on this, and where should they be going, if anywhere? And what do you think they stand to lose by not moving forward on that, if at all?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, how they bounce back with this McGregor-Nurmagomedov fight. Because if it is a pay-per-view breakthrough, they get close to 2 million pay-per-views, say, or something like that, then they can really say, hey, my formula still works. You know, we got a huge cash cow, and boom, we're in good shape. So I don't know that the UFC's got reason yet to panic. And I think Bellator, if they did well for themselves, I think that's good. You know, I think with Mousasi and Rory McDonald, they had a nice main event, a classy, real main event, not a geriatric fight. So, you know, maybe that played into it as well. A lot of people like me, you want to hear Vanderlei Silva stories. Everybody knows Silva, you know, came up rough fighting in the IVCs, and then he fought Vitor Belfort at UFC in Brazil, UFC 17, or right around there. I think they call it 17.5 nowadays, but it's UFC Brazil. And he fought there and he got killed. And after that, they asked, you know, they needed to bounce him back, and I match made his next 2 fights. So I know Vanderlei Silva pretty well. Yeah. You know, I sent guys to fight Rafael Cordero and his instructor at IVC. You know, those guys know me, and I knew Vanderlei back then. And
what were those 2 fights, Miguel?
He fought Adrian Serrano, who was a real veteran that was
absolutely,
you know, outclassed that fight. And then he fought a guy who did pretty well, had a little run in the UFC afterwards, named Eugene Jackson.
We'll have to bring Eugene and Adrian both on here at some point.
And he creamed both of them. Yeah. But the point is like Bottarelli, and I knew Vanderlei, and the reason to tell the story, other than, you know, a little bit of bringing in a little history, and Vanderlei was crushed after the Vitor loss. You know, he was absolutely crushed. I got to sit with him with a translator and do an interview. I speak Spanish, so we even got, you know, they recognized that I was kind of on their side. I wasn't just I was like a reporter kind of guy, and they were just trying to get their name out there and stuff, but he was crushed after that loss. And then, you know, it was bringing some guys, getting, you know, his resume built back up with Bottarelli. I didn't go to the Jackson fight, but I was at the Serrano fight. And, you know, the bottom line is you knew from back then that Vanderlei would still be fighting 20 years later, like now.
I mean, Vanderlei's a guy who's been through the rigors of MMA, as it were, and you know, to see him step out in the ring like that, it's not something that I want to see again. And I hope he made enough money on that to actually step down and and truly be done. And that goes the same for Quentin. They're really good people, and I like them both. You know Vanderlei better than I. You probably know Quentin better than I, but I know him well enough to know that they need to be they need to be done. But having said that, so let's cover the technology end of it, and talk to me about, okay, so kind of out with the old and in with the new, as it were. So that's the segue for that. Tell me about where are we going? Where are combat sports going with technology now, and what's going to happen? What is the new break? What's next? What can we look forward to seeing that we're not seeing yet? Do you have a prediction on that? You have any feelings for it?
I mean, I could see a path, and it might not go that way, but I could see a path, and I think it hinges on real life, real big things too. And its essence, it might be Microsoft buying Apple, or Apple buying Microsoft, or Samsung, gobbling them both up. At some point, it's going to be a union of technologies where you start having the massive amounts of choice, and right now there's like a disorganization in the choice. Like, what's really good compared, what's still going to be around in 5 years compared to, certain things. People made a fortune off of CDs and DVDs, but that didn't, that had a window, and at the end of that window, it was done, and you're done. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, are we still looking at CD and DVD things with a short term, which have a place, or what's that real long term thing that's going to happen that delivers? Can I watch whatever fight when I want live on wherever I am on my device? Wherever the devices get better, everything gets unified. The stream is better. There's a lot to overcome. I think Bellator this week streamed their event with DAZN. DAZN's also signed a bunch of boxing talent, so they're looking to deliver. They're looking to be one of the companies that's delivering them. I don't know if they're too early. There's a problem with being too early with technology too, before it's ready to catch on.
Sure.
And I don't know if they're too early trying to catch on to something here, but beforehand. Maybe they run out of resources. I do know that for a streaming company, it would frighten me if. I would like to see, and I mentioned some companies. I don't know anything about this stuff, but the bottom line is to me, if you're a big company looking to do streaming and the next level of things and stuff, and your top content is MMA and boxing, then they're going to fall short. Because I want to see more mainstream, fucking the Avengers on there and shit, That's the kind of thing. When a company has all that and boxing, just like HBO, and HBO boxing meant something for 30 years, you know what I mean? Because it was on them, and they present. So when somebody's got that premium ability to say, we're the company that brings you whatever the hell you want, including the sports, and the sports piggybacks on that.
It's kind of like the same idea. The Cage Rage podcast is a platform. So, we're about combat sports. But we're not just about MMA. We're not just about boxing. We're not just about wrestling. We're not just about jiu-jitsu. We're about all of those things. And we're not just about professional wrestling or high school wrestling. We're about both. And we're about everything else and all points in between. We're about judo. And we're going to be having guests on that speak about all of these things. The new bare knuckle boxing is something that's coming out. Chris Lytle just did one. We're going to have Keith and Chris are going to come on, Chris's manager. They're going to come on and talk to us pretty soon about that. We're supposed to be getting that set up. I'll have all that put together sometime in the next couple of months. Chris was just in Tunica, Mississippi, and knocked a guy out in 25 seconds or something. So there's a lot of different stuff going on, and the Cage Rage podcast is going to be a platform wherein we launch many, many different podcasts, not just about combat sports, but about everything. So, we want to be that sort of go-to podcast platform where people can come and see everything about everything, not just about combat sports. But initially, we are about combat sports. Anything you want to add before we wrap it up here about the Khabib and the Conor epic battle that's supposed to take place Saturday night?
Yeah, I know. Thanks to our editor there, Killer Kane, that we got you're going to have a chance to listen to this podcast before the fight, but most likely you'll be listening to it after the fight's taking place. So I'll give you a little prediction here. I think McGregor's going to break through. I think it's kind of what the sport needs, and sometimes these things have a way of taking care of themselves, karma, whatever you want to call it. The kid's had that, and he should be able to keep it going this week. I don't know if Khabib doesn't have enough little holes that this kid's not going to be able to exploit him. I think he's dangerous because he's got somebody who game plans in his corner, in his in his taking care of him in his entourage, and that person knows fighting.
Yeah, just to add a little bit to that real quickly, my thoughts on it are this. Conor has $100 million, which means he can hire anyone he wants to come in and train with him and look just like Khabib and fight just like Khabib and do everything exactly like him over and over again. And he can train his body to do everything exactly like anything that Khabib could do, which means that he can be prepared for everything that he does in every facet and still get his stuff off, which means in that way, I think he can sort of buy his way out of this and kind of buy a victory because he can buy the right strategy, as it were. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just what it is. He's earned it. He's earned it.
He's got a guy that comes forward and he excels at picking you apart when you come in.
Yeah.
He's got a guy that comes forward, doesn't have a lot of angles in his when he comes in. He likes to plod forward. So I think in that respect, McGregor sees a little bit of an opportunity there. Like I said, if Nurmagomedov can get chest to chest with him and grind him out, you got to question. I don't question that the Eagle could fight the 5 rounds. I question whether McGregor could, after a 2-year layoff and with a guy weighing on you, grinding on you for 25 minutes. Is he going to be exhausted in the 4th and not have his knockout punch anymore? Not be able to stay up off the floor. So that's what the fight will hinge on. We'll see. By the time you see this, the fight will have gone down, so we'll see how it goes. There's going to be certainly a lot to talk about afterwards.
Yeah, so we'll talk about this next Tuesday, and we'll have a lot to talk about then. Hey, let us know what you think about things. Chadillac at thecageragepodcast.com. That's CHADILLAC. Miguel at thecageragepodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, thecageragepodcast.com. Miguel Ederati on Facebook. Chad Wagner on Facebook, etc. and so forth. Catch us on YouTube. We're working on getting, Aaron, what's the deal on putting us up for getting this populated across the podcast universe right now?
This one?
Yeah.
5:30.
5:30. We should have this one on the podcast universe. It'll at least be on YouTube. Hopefully, we'll be populated across the entire podcast universe, depending on what all it takes to get that done. But before the fight tomorrow, we'll be across the entire podcast universe. You will be able to find us. We'll be on Facebook Live and all that good stuff. Thanks for showing up tonight. We love all you guys, and let us know what you think. Comment below. Namaste.